It's one of the most infamous stories of the Old West, and a lot of it played out in Yankton, South Dakota.
That's where a man named Jack McCall was tried a second time and hung for the murder of gunslinger lawman Wild Bill Hickok. And that's the focus of today's hometown history. The story begins in Deadwood, South Dakota on August 2nd, 1876.
All right, finish up this hand, deal me in, I'll be there in a second. I gotta get a drink.
Wild Bill Hickok comes into a saloon for his daily poker game.
Get out of that chair now.
But someone's in the chair where he usually sits with his back to the wall.
What's the matter with this guy, Carl? He been that way all day?
Jack McCall, who'd been living in a nearby gold mining camp, steps behind Hickok.
Take that thing! They shot Bill! Stay put. Bill!
McCall ran to his horse, but was grabbed by several men. By the next morning, a miners' court convened to determine McCall's fate.
Raise your right hand, put your other hand on the book.
Despite overwhelming evidence, McCall was found not guilty after telling the court that Hickok had killed his brother in Kansas.
It turns out that I don't think he even had any brothers. I think he only had sisters.
Crystal Mensch of the Mead Museum in Yankton says the Deadwood trial had no legal standing, since Deadwood was not part of Dakota Territory at the time, but rather the Great Sioux Reservation.
But as soon as he was off Indian Territory, bragging about this whole thing, then he was rearrested by U.S. Marshals and brought back to Yankton for an official trial.
As this marker in downtown Yankton shows, the trial of Jack McCall was held in the U.S. courtroom on the second story of the Morrison building, which was directly behind this marker. McCall's attorney was General William Henry Harrison Beadle. Beadle is so revered his statue can be found in the U.S. Capitol, honoring the Civil War veteran, lawyer, and South Dakota's first superintendent of public instruction. At trial, no witnesses were found to support McCall, and he was never put on the stand. Amazingly, Beadle also failed to try another line of defense.
Never on the basis of double jeopardy, which was interesting.
McCall was found guilty after a 6-day trial. He had 3 long winter months before facing the hangman. This marker marks the spot roughly where Jack McCall was hung on March 1st of 1877. And the marker says at the very bottom, the trap was sprung at 10:10, and he was dead 10 minutes later, an unrepentant murder of a man who had done him no wrong.
You could see McCall on the deck of the scaffold, but around the base of the scaffold, it was actually enclosed.
McCall was literally buried under the gallows, but people eventually didn't like that location, so they moved him here to this cemetery in Yankton.
In fact, when they moved the cemetery in 1881, they had dug up McCall's grave and had realized that the noose was still around his neck.
Mensch says McCall's killing of Hickok has some deep-seated roots in conspiracy.
It's always been this thing where there's just not enough known about Jack McCall that it leaves so much to interpretation. We have the U.S. Marshals book from Yankton during the time that Jack McCall was incarcerated, and the pages are missing.
Fascinating story and a little bit mysterious,
Yeah,
Larry.
no doubt about that. Now, another thing that is very interesting is that when Wild Bill was shot, he was holding a pair of black aces and eights in his hand. That series of cards has become known around the world as the dead man's hand. Ironically, in 1979, Wild Bill Hickok was inducted as a charter member into the World Series of Poker Hall of Fame that's in Las Vegas. Now, I also want to give a special thank you to Andy Mosher and the reenactors at Deadwood Alive. They provided us with the shootout video, and throughout the year, they reenact everything from the killing of Wild Bill to a Main Street shootout in Deadwood. You can find more information about them by going to deadwoodalive.com.